Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take that huge, overwhelming stack of sources, the articles, the rumors, the insider notes, all of it, and we deliver the essential knowledge and the surprising insights directly.
And we are definitely not just summarizing today.
No, not at all. We are dissecting a massive cultural phenomenon. We are talking about the hit series Stranger Things.
Mm-hmm.
And more specifically, the global viral fan theory that just refused to let the show end. I'm talking about the movement known as conformity.
It's such a fascinating case study, really. I mean, we are diving deep into the psychology of modern fandom.
Right.
We're looking at how, disappointment and just pure wishful thinking kind of coalesce into this widespread belief.
A belief that what exactly?
That the highly anticipated final conclusion of the series was essentially a strategic lie.
A lie. Wow.
Yeah, a carefully engineered placeholder for a truly game-changing secret ending, one that would shatter everything we thought we knew.
And our sources for this are just.
Yeah.
They're remarkable. They span the entire spectrum of how we consume media.
Totally.
We have the chaotic, passionate roar of social media buzz that, created the theory in the first place.
Then you have the corporate side.
Exactly. The calculated corporate silence and then the eventual denial from the And then finally, the forensic analysis from fans and critics, meticulously comparing what the Duffer Brothers said they intended versus what the audience demanded they.
So our mission today is kind of layered. First, we really need to understand the precise anatomy of this fan conspiracy, why it gained so much traction and what twist it promised.
Okay.
Second, we have to critically analyze Netflix's response, which, let's be honest, was less about extinguishing the fire and more about strategically using the flames for promotional heat.
Oh, for sure.
And finally, we connect those dots back to the core creative intent of the showrunners to explain why the conclusion we actually got left such a deep emotional and narrative void that only a spectacular conspiracy could fill it.
And the core of that theory was truly audacious. I mean, this wasn't just vague speculation about potential spin-offs or something.
No, not at all.
It was this deeply held conviction that the ending we all watched was deliberately incomplete, that the tidy, clean wrapping up of character arcs was actually the biggest red flag.
It was the clue.
It was the clue. And that a hidden seismic final episode, the real one, was just waiting in the wings to blow the whole universe wide open. It drove people back to the series, looking for ghosts.
And that desire to rewatch, that willingness to scrutinize every single frame for proof, well, that's the economic engine driving this entire story. This theory became a massive, decentralized marketing campaign for them.
Okay, let's unpack this.
So let's start with the name itself, Conformity Gate. I mean, that implies a sense of mass delusion or maybe mass coercion.
Right, like you're being forced to accept some.
Exact. The feeling among the believers was that everyone, the media, the creators, even other fans who accepted the ending, was being forced to conform to a narrative conclusion that just felt, patently untrue.
Or at least just fundamentally unsatisfying.
Deeply unsatisfying.
And the power of this rumor, I think, lay in its specificity, which is so rare for these big fan theories.
It really is. They weren't waiting for some, vague future announcement.
No.
They were convinced of a specific, defined drop date that acted as this, deadline and a point of focus for the entire global fandom.
And that date, which became it was almost sacred in some corners of the internet.
It was January 7th.
January 7th.
And it wasn't arbitrary. That was the point where fans believed Netflix would stealth drop a surprise final installment. Sometimes they called it the 9th episode, sometimes the 7th.
Right. The numbering was a bit inconsistent.
A little inconsistent, but the idea was that it would invalidate the entire preceding conclusion. It created this genuine calendar-driven anticipation.
So the specific content, this expected twist, is what made it so compelling. So the theory really zeroed in on the idea that seemingly resolved and, let's face it, slight clean ending that had already...
The one where everybody mostly survived and got their little character moment.
Yes, that. The theory was that it was actually taking place entirely within Vecna's mind. It was a psychological trap.
You have to think of it as the ultimate mind prison.
Yeah.
I mean, if the show ended with a clean victory, as it did, fans felt it betrayed the escalating stakes of the entire series.
It felt cheap.
It did.
No.
But if that clean ending was merely an illusion, Vecna's greatest, most seductive trick played on the protagonists and, by extension, the audience, well, then the creators were revealed to be geniuses.
Exactly. The perceived flaws of the ending, that everything was tied up so neatly and everybody got a happy ending without any real requisite tragedy, those became the core evidence. The audience wasn't just dissatisfied with the clean outcome. They logically inferred a plot this huge, a villain this powerful, cannot result in such a tidy resolution. Therefore, the resolution must.
And the brilliance factor here is just, it's staggering. If the Duffer Brothers had actually successfully pulled this off,
Can you imagine?
executing a finale that was itself a setup for a secret true finale. It would have been instantly legendary. It was characterized by fan analysts as potentially the biggest trick on the audience ever played in TV history. It would have completely transformed the nature of broadcast storytelling.
The narrative debt the show had accumulated over the years, it demanded a monumental sacrifice.
It really did.
If the theory were true, it would have redeemed the perceived poor quality of the initial broadcast. It would have positioned the showrunners as not just storytellers, but strategic architects.
Right. Executing what one source called a huge psychological reversal.
And it tracked. It tracked perfectly with the show's final turn towards psychological horror.
It's the ultimate compliment, really, and also the ultimate expression of audience hope to believe your creators are several steps ahead of you.
That's a great way to put it.
The depth of the disappointment in the actual ending was directly proportional to the intensity of the hope for the hidden twist. This wasn't just about watching a show. It was about maintaining faith in the intellectual and creative capacity of the people steering a generational franchise.
But, as our sources reflected, there was this interesting internal conflict within the fan community. Even as they were circulating this theory, there was this constant tension. You had the emotional investment saying, I desperately wish true, followed immediately by the rational voice saying,
but I deeply doubt the creators are actually that smart or that clever to pull this off.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially keeping an entire finished episode secret for months.
In that rational doubt, it highlights a crucial logistical point in modern media production. I mean, the complexity of keeping a massive secret, an entire, finished, highly anticipated episode involving countless cast and crew members, post-production specialists, global distribution teams. It's functionally impossible in the age of constant leaks and digital forensics.
So the fact that the theory thrived anyway...
It just speaks volumes about the audience's hunger for narrative superiority over, logistical reality.
The theory, therefore, it became a manifestation of narrative justice. If the creators couldn't deliver the stakes the story demanded, the audience would simply invent a meta-narrative where those stakes were still coming. They wanted a finale that felt truly earned, not just resolved.
And that intense engagement paved the way for the studio's next move.
Which was, notably, not to deny the rumor quickly.
Not at all. Netflix recognized the value of the noise.
So Conformity Gate wasn't just a whisper. It was a full-blown roar across social media, amplified by that looming January 7th deadline. But eventually the corporate machine had to intervene, right? And the way it happened felt incredibly calculated. We saw the confirmation come through, citing outlets like Eon Online, which officially reported that Netflix addresses Stranger Things' secret episode theory after series finale.
The official denial was, it was long delayed, precise, and ultimately designed to maximize engagement right up to the final moment.
It had to be.
Netflix waited until the deadline was upon them before they finally set the record straight that the series was concluded. The statement was concise, almost dismissive, no more trips to the upside down. The ambiguity was gone, but the timing was everything.
And the specific piece of evidence they used to definitively quell the rumors was just genius in its corporate subtlety.
It really was.
It wasn't a press release, it was a social media bio update.
Yeah. On the morning of January 7th, the exact moment the supposed Chapter 9 was expected to drop, the bios for the official Stranger Things social media accounts were just subtly updated.
And what did they say?
They simply read, all episodes of Stranger Things are now playing.
Wow.
That seemingly innocuous phrase was Netflix's official yet minimalist communication. It signaled unequivocally the product is complete, the content slate is final.
For those who had poured weeks into dissecting the end, hoping it was some clever deception, that silent, definitive change to a biofield was just the final, understated corporate... So now let's analyze the timing through the lens of audience manipulation, because it felt like pure corporate trolling.
It really did. Our sources highlight activity that seemed deliberately calculated to stoke the flames in the days leading up to January 7th.
They were absolutely playing it.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Think about the public appearances. We cited Jamie Campbell Bower, the actor who plays Vecna, appearing on Jimmy Fallon.
Right.
He didn't just appear, he participated in a highly publicized, relevant 80s-themed skit right on the eve of the supposed release date.
That is it's a perfect media-ready feedback. You have the main villain's actor, the epicenter of the whole psychic twist theory.
Yeah. Appearing in a skit that leans heavily into the show's aesthetic, right when fan anticipation is peaking. The hosts in our source discussions, they noted their belief that Netflix was deliberately messing with the audience and trolling them.
Using a star to keep the conversation hot without giving away any truth.
Precisely. And this brings us to the core business strategy. Why endure the risk of long-term audience resentment by waiting until the exact moment of expectation to crush the theory?
The answer lies in the metric-driven streaming economy. This was a highly strategic, calculated delay designed to monetize audience
They understood the psychology of speculation. Netflix knew the rumor would drive massive engagement, promotion, and crucially, so much more watch time.
Of course. If you are convinced a secret episode is coming, you don't just wait, you prepare.
And preparation means rewatching.
Exactly. You deep dive into the existing episode, searching for hidden clues, looking for the telltale signs of Vecnism. You drive traffic to every social media platform, searching for confirmation, checking every news outlet, which feeds the algorithmic promotion loop.
It's a perfect system for that.
And here's the genius of the cross-promotional time, the element that makes it truly smart from a business. Netflix had an important trailer for its slate of upcoming shows scheduled for release on January 7th.
Oh, no way. I didn't realize that.
Oh, yeah. By allowing the Conformity Gate rumor to peak and finally be resolved on that specific date, they guaranteed that massive, frantic fan traffic would be directed to every single thing Netflix had.
So it ensured huge viewership, not just for the Stranger Things accounts, but for their general promotional content.
Exact. Leveraging a rumor for platform-wide benefit.
It's a textbook case of leveraging manufactured tension. They didn't have the creative genius to execute the hidden episode.
But they had the marketing savvy to leverage the rumor of its existence to boost their metrics.
It's the second best play. Fail creatively, but win opportunistically in the market.
And this leads to a broader, high-level takeaway about the modern streaming landscape.
It really does. Platforms now recognize that audience speculation and even audience dissatisfaction are valuable commodities. They can harvest the energy of a theory, the rewatches, the searches, the community arguments, and extract maximum benefit before finally deploying a minimalist denial.
They monetize the frenzy.
Proving that in this economy, attention is the real product, even if that attention is driven by disappointment.
They successfully leveraged fan conviction for platform leverage. It's a cynical move, but financially brilliant.
For sure.
But we have to pivot now to what caused this frenzy in the first place. The audience's fundamental issue with the actual conclusion.
Right. The need for Conformity Gate didn't just materialize out of thin air. It was rooted in a genuine, pervasive dissatisfaction with the emotional and narrative resolution of the actual finale.
And the core criticism was what?
The feeling that despite the massive scale of the final battle, many fans felt there were no stakes at all in the final season.
Yeah, I felt that. I mean, if you build a mythological threat that spans dimensions and threatens the very fabric of reality, the audience expects a corresponding meaningful cost.
And they didn't get one.
No. Too many characters, particularly the beloved core group, survive. For an audience primed for epic tragedy or a massive sacrifice to justify the epic scale, the ending felt, frankly, too safe.
And that safety became the primary fuel for the dream sequence speculate. The logic was, if the Duffer Brothers weren't willing to give us the tragedy that the plot demanded, the tragedy we felt was necessary to earn the end,
then the only way to explain the remarkably clean outcome was that it simply wasn't real.
it was a narrative accounting trick.
This clash between expectation and delivery, it forces us to look directly at the creator's perspective, right?
Oh, yeah. The Duffer Brothers provided their artistic intent in an interview with a Hollywood Reporter, and they made it clear they viewed the ending through a completely different thematic lens than the audience did.
What was their
Their intention was unambiguous. They emphasized that final, carefully crafted shot of Mike closing the Wheelers' basement door.
Oh, yeah, I remember that shot.
They said this wasn't just a scenic transition. It was designed to be a definitive signal. The main story, centered on this cast and this specific era, is over for good. They considered it a deliberate, visual, and emotional punctuation.
And they went further than that, didn't they? They said the entire production team reinforced this.
The design of the closing credits was specifically chosen to reinforce the concept of finality, ensuring the audience didn't walk away thinking, see you next season.
So they intended the story of Mike, Eleven, Joyce, and Hopper to be entirely fine.
That was the goal. And the rationale for it hinges on the show's foundational genre. They stated repeatedly that Stranger Things was, at its heart, a coming-of-age story. The massive sci-fi elements were the stage dress, but the core drama was always about adolescence and transition. Therefore, the act of Mike closing the basement door, the physical place where their childhood bonds were forged over D&D, symbolized him closing the door on his child.
That reframing is powerful, but it requires the audience to prioritize the emotional metaphor over the mythological.
100.
The source analysis offered a deeply personal interpretation. It said the real loss intended by the creators was not a character death, but the end of the show itself.
Yeah, that That collective realization that everything changed and that specific nostalgic version of childhood was definitively over.
It's that profound sadness of looking back and realizing that the era you're nostalgic for is true.
They tried to trade a literal high-impact character death for a metaphorical universal emotional loss about growing up. And for many adult viewers who watched the show through a lens of 80s nostalgia, that emotional hit did resonate.
Especially those revisiting high school settings as, mature adults, teachers, that sort of thing.
But the metaphorical loss couldn't carry the weight of the escalating mythology. The show had just grown too big.
And we reference the consistent criticism that the series became increasingly convoluted in its later seasons, moving far afield from the simpler, more contained, character-driven initial outing.
The analogy drawn in the sources was perfect. The X-Files.
Yes.
When that series began, it successfully balanced isolated Monster of the Week episodes with an overarching conspiracy. That balance kept the stakes high, but manageable.
But as the show progressed, it became almost solely focused on the massive, often impenetrable government conspiracy and alien involvement.
And what happens when you shift that balance? The story has to constantly escalate its complexity to feel relevant, leading to a convoluted final story.
The narrative debt becomes unpayable.
Exactly. Stranger Things did the same thing. It shifted from battling a single monster named after a D&D creature to battling an ancient, psychic, godlike entity manipulating reality across multiple dimensions.
By escalating the scope so dramatically, the show created a narrative debt that only a spectacular, costly, mythological vision could settle.
And when the Duffer Brothers delivered a thematic coming-of-age ending instead, it just felt like an inadequate resolution to the cosmic horror
The desire for the huge psychological reversal of Conformity Gate was born from the fans' need to retroactively inject the necessary mythological stakes backstory.
You can't spend 2 seasons threatening the entire world and then conclude with just a metaphor about Mike turning 8. The emotional and the mythological conclusions simply failed to align.
Leading to that gaping dissatisfaction.
Exactly.
And that dissatisfaction wasn't just about the plot, it was about the details, too.
Oh, yeah. The mythology of Stranger Things is fundamentally built on 1980, and at the absolute center of that culture is Dungeons & Dragons. The foundation of the characters' friendship and the naming convention for nearly every supernatural threat they face. But this very foundation became a critical...
This is where we delve into geek credibility. Our sources highlighted 10 detailed and widespread criticism dedicated to art. The creators were getting called out all over the place, failing to maintain accurate fidelity to specific D&D culture of, 90s?
Yeah, that specific window. And the specific complaint was surgical. They clearly never touched a first edition book.
Okay, so this is a deep cut, so let's provide some context for you listening. To the average viewer, D&D is D&D.
Right. But to a dedicated fan of that era, the show frequently confused elements from different editions or failed to adhere to the rigid lore of the time. In the early 80s, the game of choice for serious players was often Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, or AD&D First Edition.
And that system was dense.
Incredibly dense, complex, and notoriously unforgiving. It had thousands of pages of rules and specific detailed lore about monsters and cosmology.
So the criticism was that while the show nailed the aesthetic, the red box, the character sheets, the basement setting, it failed on the technical
Totally. If you were going to use the Demogorgon and the Mind Flayer, creatures with rich, established lore in the AD&D Monster Manual, you have to respect that source material. The fans felt the showrunners just used the names as cool signifiers without understanding the underlying mythology.
And this fed into the theory about the creator's background. The critique suggested the Duffer Brothers, who were viewing the 80s through a generational...
As told by DVD or as told by their older siblings.
Right. They might have captured the feeling of the 80s, but they missed specific authentic required to satisfy...
And supporting this, the sources noted that Duffer Brothers themselves claimed they played Magic the Gathering.
Which is its own geek credential, for sure.
Totally. But playing MTG in the 90s just underscores a lack of firsthand immersion in the specific rule-set version of 80s AD&D the show had made central to its entire narrative framework.
But why did these niche errors matter?
Because the role of D&D fundamentally shifted in this series. Initially, it was just shorthand away to establish the kids as geek, indicating their intelligence and social alienation.
Right.
But by season 1, the Demogorgon was the name of the central threat. By the final seasons, the upside-down mythology and Vecna's psychic domain were inextricably linked to D&D concepts.
So the moment D&D became the show's mythological scaffold,
the creators incurred a massive debt to accuracy. The criticism was simple. If the game was going to be the central thematic and naming device for a generational franchise, they should have hired experts consultants who lived the 80s game culture, to double-check everything.
Because multiple visible continuity errors occurred throughout the show's run.
What's fascinating here is the disconnect between creative intent and execution. The creators likely viewed D&D as a loose, nostalgic analogy, a starting point for their own original mythology. But the fandom, specifically the segment steeped in TTRPG history, embraced it as canon.
Using the original AD&D text as a critical rubric to judge the show's authenticity.
It's a fundamental challenge for nostalgic pop culture. You are constantly balancing the need for broad appeal, which requires simplified mythology, with the demand for specific, authentic detail from the niche subculture being portrayed.
And when you borrow so heavily from a specific rule-bound community,
the members of that community become your most knowledgeable and often harshest critic.
The D&D inaccuracies, however small in the grand scheme, they fed into the larger narrative dissatisfaction.
Oh, for sure.
It created this subconscious doubt. If they can't get the rules of the game right, the very thing that anchors this whole story, how can we trust them to get the ending?
It eroded the faith needed to accept the creator's vision of a clean, thematic ending.
The irony, of course, is that Stranger Things is directly responsible for a massive resurgence.
Huge, demonstrating the deep cultural power the game holds. They capitalized on it expertly, but perhaps they didn't respect the complexity of the source material enough to ensure flawless execution.
So once Netflix issued that definitive minimalist denial on January, the emotional fallout was, we have to acknowledge the despondent Stranger Things fans weeping and wailing, realizing their great, brilliant, hidden ep never coming.
That the creative team simply wasn't that audacious.
But this disappointment didn't result in passive resignation.
No, it fueled a new, exciting, and frankly, a little terrifying creative response.
Yeah.
Unique to the modern digital era. Fans responded to their disappointment not just by complaining, but by actively creating what they felt were superior unofficial endings.
And they did this using the most cutting-edge tool available today, artificial intelligence.
Yeah. Fans leveraged generative AI technology, visual, textual, simulated, to produce what the final battle should have been, filling the narrative void with conflicts that satisfied the high stakes the actual ending lacked.
This moves beyond simple fan fiction, doesn't it? This is about fan production.
Oh, absolutely. We have specific, circulating examples of this fan-generated content. They created scenarios depicting the characters fighting not one, but multiple demogorgons simultaneously.
A true, overwhelming threat.
Yes, something that conveyed the epic, catastrophic danger fans felt was absent from the actual conclusion.
And here's the perfect telling detail, one that reveals the heart of the audience's desire. One memorable fan-created visual showed Will Byers using the Force to move rocks.
Which is technically incongruous, right? It mixes franchises.
Totally. But it speaks volumes about the desire for characters to display truly spectacular, high-powered abilities during the climax, fulfilling the maximalist fantasy the show had hinted at. The audience was seeking spectacle over canon.
And the collective sentiment surrounding this wave of fan-created content became a scathing indictment of the official show. The feeling was pervasive. The AI-generated endings, or the hypothetical versions created collaboratively by the community, were probably better than what we got.
Which quickly led to the radical suggestion that the entire second half of the final season should be redone to match the stakes fans had imagined.
This represents a massive power shift in the relationship between audience and creator. We are no longer in an era where the audience merely critiques the product in forums.
No, they now possess the tools AI to rapidly generate, iterate, and produce technically polished alternatives. They can hold up their fan-made version and say, this is what superior writing and high stake.
The implications are profound. Creators are now competing not just with the expectations of professional writers, but with the collective AI-enhanced imagination of their own audience.
Which can mobilize instantly to fix perceived narrative failings with generative tools.
The barrier between criticizing and producing has nearly vanished.
And the power of AI contributed directly back to the original Conformity Gate rumor itself, demonstrating a perfect feedback formation.
How so?
Well, if fans can generate realistic, detailed images, text, and even video concepts, it becomes incredibly difficult to discern studio fact from fan-created fantasy.
That is the broader implication for pop culture moving forward. The host pointed out the real problem with AI now is that you cannot tell what is real and what's not real. A dedicated fan community can create something that looks exactly like a legitimate studio leak,
giving substance to the wildest wishful thinking.
And we saw the perfect example of this blurring reality when that specific fake AI image and text began circulating.
The memo.
Yes, the fake memo. It was fabricated to look like an internal document. Property of Netflix, January 7th, Chapter 9, The Trance of Mike Wheeler Do Not Share.
That text, perfectly mimicking corporate urgency and confidentiality, was convincing enough to fuel the rumor further.
Demonstrating how AI can lend verisimilitude to pure invention.
So the cycle is complete. Fan disappointment leads to a massive viral.
Strategic silence by the company encourages the rumor.
When the rumor is denied, the ensuing disappointment fuels creative redress, using AI to demonstrate what could have been,
thereby deepening the critique of the original ending. The creators are left fighting a battle against the audience's ability to generate better, more satisfying narrative reality.
In this brave new world, if the studio doesn't deliver the ending, the fans will simply make a superior one and show it to the world. So we've reached the conclusion of this deep dive into conformity. The spectacular theory that captivated millions was definitively debunked by a subtle social media bio update. But the sheer volume of conviction from fans highlights an inescapable truth. The perceived creative failings and the narrative debt of the actual finale created a massive void that an elaborate fan conspiracy was only too happy and too well-equipped to fill.
The analysis strongly suggests that a true secret episode, the Trance of Mike Wheeler twist, would have been a historically significant moment in television.
No question.
It would have allowed the show to conclude on a note of true, surprising, and earned genius, transforming the ending from a safe resolution to an audacious deception.
And because that potential was so widely recognized across the fandom, Netflix is likely spending considerable time reflecting on the lost opportunity.
Kicking themselves, maybe.
Probably kicking themselves. While their strategic silence was a corporate the ship has for any secret up. The story is finished. Mike's basement door is closed.
And we must accept the finite nature of their childhood and their specific conflict.
And that acceptance leads us to a final, challenging thought for you to consider as you reflect on the end of.
The ultimate irony of the finale's disappointment means that Stranger Things fans now inherit a feeling shared by the long-term fans of virtually every major generational franchise, from Star Wars to Lord of the Rings to Doctor Who.
It's the painful yet common rite of passage in pop.
It is. When a show becomes this integral to a generation's identity, the expectations placed upon the final moments grow exponentially. They become so large that they often become impossible to satisfy.
Now that Stranger Things has concluded, its dedicated fans are initiated into the universal experience of collective fan disappointment.
Where the greatest narrative tension isn't the conflict on screen, but the inevitable conflict between creator vision and audience expectation.
So the real question that lingers is, when you look back at Stranger Things years from now, will the deepest loss you feel be the end of the story, the closing of the basement,
or the loss of faith in the people who were telling it? The quest for the perfect ending continues, perhaps now, only in the realm of AI.